Semolina, which is essentially the endosperm, is ground even further to create wheat flour. Flour is prized for producing light-textured and highly structured products. The key element that determines texture and structure is gluten. Gluten is formed by the proteins glutenin and gliadin, which are present in wheat flour. These proteins are not soluble in water. Dry flour on its own cannot develop gluten. It requires water or liquid in order to be developed. The first stage in developing gluten is to add water or liquid to the flour. The mixture is then agitated until a glue-like substance is formed. In the second stage, more flour is incorporated until the mass starts to form a ball. The mass will initially look very rough as the proteins are initially coiled and scattered throughout the mass. During the third stage, the proteins are stretched and elongated through the act of kneading. We can demonstrate this by using coils. These coils represent the proteins glutenin and gliadin, which start out scattered. Through kneading, these coils are elongated and aligned until they form gluten strands. As the dough is kneaded, the gluten networks begin to stretch and develop even further, making the gluten strands more cohesive and elastic. Once the gluten proteins are stretched and develop fully, the dough becomes silky and very elastic. This kneading time is essential for many doughs to develop their structure. If not kneaded properly, the dough will be weak and it won't properly rise during baking. To demonstrate what gluten is, we will isolate these proteins by washing out the starch in this ball of dough. The cloudiness in the water comes from the starch. Since the proteins are not soluble in water, but the starch is, eventually we end up with a tough, chewy gluten ball. The elasticity in the gluten ball allows it to be stretched like a drum skin. This is what gives pasta its elasticity and capability to be stretched quite long and thin. If the dough is not well kneaded, the gluten will not develop properly. Gluten can also trap air, much like a balloon. As a result, when gases are formed from steam, yeast, baking powder, or soda, the gluten expands and traps these gases. You can see that when this gluten ball is baked in the oven, it expands. The proteins cook and set, producing those wonderful air pockets we appreciate in breads. Different flours contain different protein content, which means they will produce different amounts of gluten. Therefore, knowing how to choose the right flour for the job is essential to success.